Well, there, there's progress being made. Like, for instance, Tasmania has outlawed plastic shopping bags now, and that, but
Right.
it's moving very, very slowly. But what we have to do is, give an incentive on this. This last year, I spent a lot of time on the islands of Tonga, Samoa, and the Great Barrier Reef, and every place we found plastic, we gathered tons of this stuff up, just walking the beaches. So first of all, we have to get that incentive. For instance, if we were to tell the Samoans or the Tongans or the Tahitians or Cook Islanders, we'll come by and we'll buy that from you. We'll pick it up. And then we have to have somewhere to take that and then process it into something else. And so there's one problem is taking the plastic off the islands, off the beaches, and the other one is extracting it from the ocean. And that's going to be a more sophisticated technology, but I think it can be done. Really, you just vacuum it up and make sure that you find a way that you don't kill marine wildlife while you're doing it. But these are all possibilities, and that's what we want to do with Vortex is to get the ships out there. Sea Shepherd has ships. Right now we're trying to get a research vessel, a sailing vessel out there to just research the extent of this, concentrating first on the Hawaiian National Park area from Midway to Hawaii. And then after that get the larger vessels in there that can find a way to extract that. So we know what the problem is, and the problem that we do have in our society is governments especially like to talk about problems, but they never solve them. Every single environmental initiative in the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Conference on the Environment, not one of them has been implemented. I think the only thing that ever came out of the 92 conference was Gro Harlem Brundtland, the Prime Minister of Norway, coined the word sustainability and sustainable, which today means business as usual, but by under a more acceptable name. Everything is sustainable now, when in fact it is not. It's a big lie. And so what we have to do is concentrate on finding solutions. And those solutions are certainly doable. We just have to have the incentive to do it. And the problem is governments don't have incentives. Unless there's an economic or a political motivation for them, they're not going to get involved. But people do have an incentive because people want to live and people want their children to live. And every social problem throughout the world history has been solved by passionate people, not by governments, but by passionate people. And to me, that is the foundation of changing the world, getting people of passion. And when you combine passion with imagination, a sense of humor, and courage, you got yourself a movement and a force to be reckoned with. And that's what we're trying to do, is build that kind of a movement to save our oceans. And the reason we concentrate on the oceans is we have to save the oceans to save everything on land, to save ourselves.
What is the state of the oceans right now?
Jacques Cousteau said just before he died that the oceans are dying in our time, and that if the navies of the world had any sense of a moral responsibility, they would be out there defending the oceans instead of playing their silly little war games with each other. And really, that's what we should be doing. The oceans are dying in our time. The reefs of the world will be gone by 2030. And I've dove on them, I've seen the steady deterioration and diminishment of life among the reefs from the Great Barrier Reef to Hawaii to Key West, around the world, and it's accelerating. And if the oceans die, that's a major ecosystem of the planet that is just gone for, well, not forever, but after every major extinction event, it takes 18 to 20 million years to recover. So I don't know if we can wait around that long.
What does that mean when it comes to, Boris Worm mentioned these 2048 number of the collapse of like nearly all fisheries that we know.
Boris Worm is one of the most knowledgeable marine scientists, and he also is, the United Nations agrees with him on this. The United States government agrees with him on this. By 2048, every single world fishery in the world will be gone.
What does that mean in detail, Paul, for everybody here in the room?
It means we're all in a state of collapse. It becomes ecological collapse. And everything is dependent upon everything else. For instance, the shark. People say, well, we got to get rid of sharks because they're attacking people, despite the fact that the average number of shark attacks in the world every year is 5. The average number of people killed by ostriches every year is 100. So ostriches are more dangerous than sharks. But the other thing, too, is more dangerous to play golf than it is to go diving or surfing with sharks, because more people get killed by lightning on golf courses than are attacked by sharks. But the thing is, the shark is an integral part of our marine ecosystem. It has formed and shaped evolution in our oceans for 450 million years. Every fish you see in the sea, its camouflage, its color, its behavior has been shaped by the shark. And we're killing 75 to 90 million of them every year, and we call them the monsters.
Why do we kill them?
Primary reason they're killing them is for shark fin soup because there's a growing demand in Asia for that.
And Damien Hirst sculptures.
Yeah.
And all,
It's true. You have to renew
they
them
have to be
every 10
replaced
years.
every 5 years.
and
5 years.
there's
Yeah.
also a
5
myth that
5 years.
5 years.
eating
Wow.
shark cartilage prevents you from getting cancer, but
Sorry.
it's just snake oil medicine. There's nothing to that at all. But all of these fisheries are in a state of collapse, and there's no economic motivation. And what is called it's the economics and politics of extinction. There's money to be made by driving species extinct. And the best example of that is the bluefin tuna. The bluefin tuna is the most expensive fish in the world. The average price of a bluefin tuna on the Tokyo market is $75,000, one fish, and some of them have sold over $1 million for one fish. Now, this is the fastest fish in the ocean. It's a warm-blooded fish, but it's in big demand. And so every year they set a quota. Every year those quotas are exceeded, and it goes on with no punishments at all. Now, why is it there money to be made from it? Because Mitsubishi and other companies buy the bluefin tuna and they store it in refrigerated warehouses and they keep it there. They want a 5-year supply, 10-year supply, hopefully a 15-year supply. Because as the numbers of the fish go down in the ocean, the price of the fish goes up. Diminishment translates into a greater value. And if you wipe it out and there's not a single bluefin tuna left in the ocean, you've got a priceless commodity sitting in your frozen warehouses that you can then set the price on, and billions of dollars worth of profits for companies like Mitsubishi. So there is an incentive for them to destroy life in our oceans because they don't really give much thought to what the consequences are going to be, what the world is going to be like 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now, because that's not on their bottom line. Their bottom line is how much money are we going to return to our shareholders in the shortest possible period of time. And this economic system is driving the world towards destruction.
How does it look 2048? What will be out there in the ocean?
Well,
if
hopefully,
we continue like that, if you don't save us.
well, don't look at me. I'm not going to do it. Hopefully, we will have a movement that will stop it. And if we have that movement that can stop it, it'll look pretty. It'll look good. We can turn this around. Nature has a resilience. Nature can rebound, but we have to stop the assault, and that's what we're concentrating on now: is stopping that assault. And to do that, we need imagination. We need alternatives. We need motivation, and that's what we're working towards getting. And this is where everybody can come together. Teaching, art, engineering, all of these things come together to try to find solutions.
Imagination. Can we talk about your current work, which is, I feel, totally related to that function an artist has in creating a new consumer behavior or making people understand and reflecting how humankind treats this planet?
Yeah, the work, the new series came by. I just saw this gas station. Popped in my head 2.5 years ago. We started. I just saw this image of this. I didn't know what it meant, but it was a little gas station in Maui, and where I live, just sort of at night, illuminated, and I saw this old temple. And as I started working on this series, handcrafting these little miniatures, I then understood the relevance of why, or the importance of what they represented, and the Industrial Revolution and the discovery of fossil fuels have been the biggest change to humanity, people, our evolution, ever. That's been the greatest change. So population spiked along with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the use of fossil fuels, and along with every single thing that we see, feel, hear, touch, move, transportation, the longevity of our lives, everything has been affected by this. Most of us wouldn't even be in this room had it not been for that. It's only been 200 years in the Industrial Revolution, 175 years, 200 years. So so it's been the biggest change for the trajectory of humanity. But then as I read more and got really interested, and I've always been interested, but really sort of in earnest researching stuff, also realized that we've also changed the planet's, the history of the planet, the actual physical makeup of our atmosphere has been most greatly altered by the same event, the Industrial Revolution, and the use of fossil fuels. So we've changed the composition of our atmosphere in the biggest possible way since the meteorite, which caused the ice age, which buried the forests, which we're now pumping back into the atmosphere. So it's this full. Did you follow that? You know, so it's sort of like this. We're at this auspicious time where it's this full circle. We've reached this full circle. You know, we're the atmosphere was never more different than that meteorite, which caused the ice age, buried the rainforest, which we're now pumping back into the atmosphere in the form of carbon.
And this fossil oil came plastic,
so
but
what represented that was the gas station or the refinery. I thought that was a visual representation of that. And then using all these disposable objects and plastic objects, which were also made from petrochemicals, things that made sense. So not only was it visually intriguing, but it also conceptually went with what I was trying to express. So I think living in Maui, I've always had this consciousness of the planet and being vegetarian, sensitive to the earth. I think my mom brought me up with a lot of respect with that. But even as I was working as a fashion photographer, I was trying to do images, which was a paradox. Doing a fashion photograph that with all these houses that were destroyed, which that were then published right when Katrina happened. So it was on the newsstand when Katrina happened. People were outraged because they thought I was exploiting this tragedy. So.
And we have an image of that right here, actually.
Oh yeah, that top one there. So that's what I knew. I had my pictures were kind of not really working for the fashion. So we're distracting ourselves by buying more stuff. Meanwhile, my mom was living in Hurricane Alley. That when the editor called me and she was like, "We're getting all these complaints. People think you're exploiting Katrina. Can you just?" And I said, "They think David, they think these pictures are about hurricanes." I said, "Well, they are about hurricanes and the change." So the bill is coming due. The fact that we're living in the most decadent time in the history of the planet, in a global sense. There's been civilizations that have gone through periods of decadence, and they've all fallen. There have been civilizations that have not lived sustainably or not lived in sync with nature, and they all disappeared. They all failed. So will this be another giant failure? Will some archaeologists from another millennium, because the Earth is only half of its age, so it has plenty of time for a new species, maybe more enlightened species to evolve. But maybe we'll be walking through a jungle one day and see one of these gas stations, which, it really is a representation of the rise and fall of a civilization. Hopefully not the fall, but everything comes from this event, and also it's the unifying thing, as a friend of mine points out. No matter what political party or religion, part of the world you live in, or economic bracket you're in, you go to a gas station of some sort. Whether you're Taliban or T-Bagger, you go to a gas station.
To the new temples?
So it unites us. That's the one thing that we all have in common, is the use of this. And we inherited it. We're the children that they were talking about in the 50s and 60s. So we inherited this infrastructure. What are we going to do now to change it? Well, it's going to take a massive awakening. It's like we're in the dark ages when we need an enlightenment right now. And people like Paul Watson are leading us to that. Reverend Billy, who does using art and humor and street art, and comes from street art, and has turned that into, really raising consciousness. So much of the things I learned, about corporations and things and what they were doing, comes from Reverend Billy, who's here with us today, and he'll do these speeches in St. Mark's Church, for instance, and every single word, and he's stating all these facts that are mind-blowing. These farmers are making less than a penny a pound for the most expensive coffee sold on earth at Starbucks, right? And they can't even clothe and feed their children. And I learned this from Reverend Billy. Meanwhile, in the audience are executives from those corporations, because if he says one thing that's not true, they'll sue him for slander. So everything he says is based on facts. So it's people like Reverend Billy, activist in one way, and then there's Paul in another way, with the oceans. But it's one, and it's not just an American or Western issue anymore. It's global, And how do we raise the sensitivity of people, places where shark fin soup is this incredible, luxury, or the rhino horn is an aphrodisiac. How do we change, these things? Well, this is our history. No, it's not. So it's sitting in an arena watching people being tortured. That was, part of Roman history too. Doesn't mean we're still doing it. We do now movie theaters. We watch people die slowly, but but we have to. There has to be an enlightenment, a global enlightenment, and not trying to be a pessimist, because I'm not. I'm trying to be an optimist. And I asked Paul, how do you stay so optimistic? And he's physically doing something. I think that's very, very important. When you're physically out there doing something, when you've founded something like Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd in one lifetime, you're physically out there really doing it. But how do you not give in to apathy or hopelessness? That's a huge question. And so I think this idea of a global enlightenment. Hopefully, it doesn't have to come at our people. They say find God on their deathbed or whatever. Hopefully, it doesn't come when the great flood or the great disruption has washed everything away, and no longer the presidents and the CEOs and all the shareholders once you have nothing, then you're kind of like, oh well, now I'm enlightened, and now I see the importance of the earth. Hopefully, we don't have to wait that long.
This enlightenment David is talking about, you described that in your text, actually kind of part of his job. He, with the camera as his weapon, he as the activist artist, does have a big part in that whole cultural change of mindset, or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of waking up and understanding how everything relates. And how do you see David and his work? What can he do?